Welcome back. I'm Peter St. Onge. This is a weekly roundup of my daily videos on the economy and freedom, where I cut through the BS and lay out what the gaslighting clowns pulled out of their hats this week and what is coming next. The deficit just topped $1 trillion, and we are not even half through the fiscal year. Congratulations, Congress. You earned it. Well, you stole it. This puts us on track to a $2 trillion deficit. That's not including the war. To be fair, it is $140 billion less than last year. Sadly, that is not because Congress spent less. Actually hiked spending despite applauding like trained seals for Doge. No, the deficit fell because taxes rose by $200 billion. It's like bragging you paid off your credit card by stealing it from your girlfriend. The numbers come from Treasury, who reported they've already spent $3.1 trillion just 5 months into the fiscal year, of which just $2.1 trillion was taxes. The rest was borrowed to the tune of $7 billion per day. Breaking it down, defense spending jumped $14 billion. Again, this is before the war. Interest jumped $31 billion, where borrowing to pay the interest. Non-defense discretionary did fall, entirely driven by defunding the Department of Education. But that was swamped by automatic increases in entitlements, so Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, which Congress puts on autopilot so they don't actually have to sully their hands voting for national bankruptcy. Meanwhile, taxes jumped even more, with income tax jumping $100 billion, payroll tax jumping $34 billion, and tariffs, of course, jumping $109 billion. Now, I've argued tariffs are worth it if they replace income tax, which hits Americans much harder. But that's not what Congress did. They took $1.09 in tariffs on top of an additional $133 of income and payroll. But the best you could say is at least the economy's growing fast enough to keep up with the debt, thanks to Trump extending tax cuts, which boost investment, along with cutting red tape and extorting foreign countries into building factories in America. But in debt terms, Congress is canceling all that with additional spending. Note, all of this is before the war that the Pentagon just admitted is costing nearly $2 billion per day. That's $60 billion per month. For perspective, $60 billion could build enough factories to employ 60,000 Americans, and that would be every month. Prediction market Kalshi is actually pegging it closer to $3 billion a day. Not all war spending is counted by the Pentagon. The problem is if oil sets off a recession. Now, historically, recessions blow out the deficit because tax revenue collapses and welfare payments soar. If we average every recession going back to 1981, the average deficit swing is 6% of GDP, which is $2 trillion today. In other words, Congress is planning a $1.9 trillion deficit. A long war could push that to $2.5. A recession puts it at $4.5 trillion, which is 15% of GDP, also known as Banana Republic territory. So as next, while the world is focused on Iran and oil prices, Congress lurks in the shadows, marching us off the fiscal cliff. Doge was the opportunity of a lifetime, and it bounced off the swamp like a rubber ball off an oil tanker. Perhaps someday Republican voters will get angry enough to vote the bums out. Until then, you might want to buy some gold, silver, or Bitcoin. In case you haven't filled the tank in a while, gas prices went up a lot. How can Trump, maybe even our useless Congress, get them back down? Since Trump started rocking the Casbah, a gallon of gas went from $2.98 to now $3.70, according to AAA. That's actually a lot less than oil, which spiked about 50%, which is common since the gasoline supply chain runs on a lag. But it means gas is trending up. Prediction market Kalshi thinks we hit $4.30 in the next 2 weeks. A gas at $4.30 means the average American household would be spending $300 a month filling up. So how to get it down? Now, the obvious one is a short war. Either win the war or declare victory and go home. Prediction markets are currently 50-50 on the war ending by May 31st, as in 50% it keeps going into the summer. Other than that, there's a lot Trump's already done to get gas prices down, like providing insurance or escorts for oil tankers, pretending not to notice sanctioned Russian oil going to India, and releasing oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which, thanks to Drill Baby Drill, covers round about 4 years of Middle East oil, even though Biden drained it by a third to buy his 2022 midterm elections. Still, all that is already baked into prices. You need more. Now, we could drill more. The U.S. could probably raise oil production by almost a third if permits, environmental reviews, and offshore drilling were freed up. But all that takes years to build. So what's fast? And the single fastest is waiving the 18-cent federal tax on gasoline, maybe even the state taxes that average another 33 cents, up to 70 cents in California and Illinois. Trump can also immediately push 3 deregulations that add up to another 20 or 25 cents. So waive ethanol blending, which is welfare for corn farmers, allow winter-grade fuel, which is cheap, but the climate fairies don't like it, and get rid of an abomination dating from the 1920s, the Crony-Jones Act, which bans foreign ships and crews from domestic shipping. This is welfare for the minuscule but donor-heavy shipbuilding industry, and it drives up prices in normal times. It's why peanut butter costs $12 in Hawaii, and it's also why it's cheaper to ship a couch from Shanghai than Ohio. But it is catastrophic when you've got an oil shortage and can't use 99.5% of these ships in existence. Together, these might drop gas prices 20 cents, closer to 25 on the East Coast, where foreign tankers make a bigger impact. Finally, the nuclear option and oil export ban. China and Thailand have already done this. India and South Korea are considering it. Now, this one's interesting because the U.S. is one of the largest oil exporters in the world. So a ban would drop domestic prices potentially by 10 to 25%. So that's up to $1 cheaper on gas. But it would also drive up prices in Europe and Asia by almost as much. That would accelerate shortages in Asia, and it could spark a crisis in Europe, which is already facing an embargo from Russia. They'd be down to pixie farts, also known as windmills. So as next, oil prices will stay high until the Iran war ends. But every crisis is an opportunity to permanently lower prices, whether it's gas taxes, drilling, ethanol, or the Crony-Jones Act. A word from our sponsor. If you own gold, and many of you do, you already understand how it protects your wealth from the insanity coming out of Washington. The inflation, the recessions, the wars. But with monetary metals, there's a way to actually earn a yield of up to 4% on your gold paid in more ounces of gold. You retain ownership of real, allocated physical gold with no storage costs while your ounces grow every month outside the banking system. If you're serious about protecting your future and building your legacy, head to monetarymetals.com/Peter to get started. Now back to our show. Job openings jumped 400,000 last month, which is annualized 5 million new jobs yearning for a worker. So much for the collapsing job market CNN promised. It was the largest increase since 2024, and it's odd since just last month the BLS reported a catastrophic drop of 92,000 jobs. So what is going on? Last week, the notorious Bureau of Labor Statistics released their so-called JOLTS numbers, job openings and labor turnover, which tallies the number of job openings along with hires, quits, and layoffs. Hires rose a smidge, about 20,000, calling into question BLS's previous estimate of 92,000 lost. Meanwhile, layoffs actually fell, according to the BLS, by 35,000. So much for the AI jobs Armageddon that is going to buy us the UBI. The all-important quit rate actually rose. This is good because if more people quit their jobs, it means they think jobs are easy to find. You get worried when nobody's quitting. Now, interestingly, quit rates are highest in blue-collar jobs like construction and trades, and they're worst in high-pay, white-collar jobs. I've been warning all year this is what AI is doing. It's helping blue-collars, and it's gutting the cubicle jobs. And then the big one from JOLTS, job openings, which rose 400,000 on the month to nearly 7 million unfilled jobs in the country. Breaking it down by sector, one of the biggest was finance and insurance, which surged 170,000 openings on the month. They almost doubled openings. This is weird since finance is supposed to be ground zero for AI replacing jobs along with entry-level tech. But there's a simple explanation. Financial stress creates finance jobs. People to restructure loans, analyze credit risk, handle bankruptcies and defaults, figure out which hedge fund just vaporized on a dog-powered coin. And the poster child for that stress is the $1.8 trillion shadow banking system, private credit, that has apparently gone wild with risk and is now announcing defaults and lock-ins nearly daily. Lock-in is where you can't take your money out of the fund. It's not yet 2008 level, but it is looking ominous, and it's apparently splendid for financial hiring. The next biggest jump was retail, trade, and transportation. Openings jumped 130,000 in retail alone. The reason here is the tariffs, which ran down inventories in 2025. They were dodging the tariffs, and now companies have to restock. Then the third big jump, leisure and hospitality. This actually never recovered from COVID. Openings are still down nearly 500,000 from 2019, so it's been slogging back month by month, and it matters because it is enormous. So restaurants alone employ 12 million Americans. It's larger than manufacturing, and it's also a safety net job. Whatever happens, you can always bartend. Moreover, these jobs are immune to AI. It'll be a while before AI can clean your hotel room or serve that drink. Now, it wasn't all rosy. The biggest drop in openings was professional and business services cubicle jobs. These collapsed by 200,000 on the month. They're down 300,000 on 2026. This is ground zero for AI, which is replacing consultants, marketing, and corporate services, along with tech contractors, H-1Bs. So the main risk to jobs this year is the war, specifically oil prices. But zooming out, American jobs are splitting in two, with white collars hurting, but blue collars cashing in. This will drive a tsunami of AI doom porn, since it's those white-collar journalists, professors, and analysts who write the doom porn. We'll see how long the war goes, but for now, we are growing jobs faster than Americans can fill them. Canada just lost 84,000 jobs in a single month. In U.S. terms, that is almost 800,000 jobs in a month. That goes on top of losing 25,000 jobs in the previous month, January, which is another 250,000 in U.S. terms. Of course, 96% were private sector jobs over the 2 months. Government workers are doing just fine. Meanwhile, a new study found over half of Canadians have to borrow money for groceries, including buy now, pay later and payday loans. It also found over half of Canadians are skipping meals to make ends meet. That is partly because they don't have jobs, and partly because food inflation is now the highest in the G7 at 7.3% year on year. Beef is up 17%, coffee's up 30%. Timmy's is a luxury at this point. So incomes are West Virginia, home prices are San Francisco, and now Canadian jobs and groceries are going Venezuela. Broadcaster CBT sums it up, quote, "It feels like an empty pit of despair." But don't worry, assisted suicide is now same day in Canada, perfect if you are hungry and in a rush. The numbers come from Stats Canada, who report 109,000 full-time jobs were torched in just 2 months. Outside COVID, that is the most since the 2008 crisis. This sent unemployment to 6.7%, which is 50% higher than the U.S. Canadian youth unemployment hit 14.1%, which is 1 in 7. Keep in mind, that's just people actively looking for jobs. It does not count discouraged workers who have given up. That might bring it to 1 in 4 young Canadians. So what's driving it? Well, part of it was importing 4 million third world migrants. That's about 40 million in U.S. terms, who turned Canada into a one-party communist state, while liberal state, and raised welfare costs and taxes to the point Canadians can only spend half their paycheck. But the other part was Canada's globalist tool Mark Carney going elbows up with Trump, meaning let's fight, playing the nationalist card instead of negotiating to reduce Canada's trade barriers that shut out American goods. To give a flavor, Canada puts 160% tariffs on American eggs, 200% on chicken, 298% on American milk, cheese, and butter. They block American banks, while Canadian banks have grabbed $700 billion of U.S. deposits. And they block American trucking, replacing us with Indians who have killed dozens of Canadians, including a crash in Saskatchewan that killed 16 members of a junior hockey team. The trade war drives food inflation since half of Canada's imported food comes from the U.S., so retaliatory tariffs get passed on. And the trade war is crushing Canadian manufacturing as companies flee to the U.S. Jeep just moved its biggest plant ever from Ontario to Illinois and Ohio. Nationwide, goods-producing sectors in Canada lost 28,000 jobs last month, 250,000 in U.S. terms in a single month. So Elbows Up plays great with Canada's elite, who are willing to sacrifice Canadian blue-collars to score points on America and Trump. Many probably enjoy the sacrifice since Canada's left-wing elite hates blue-collars just like in America. So what's next? It's going to get a lot worse because the U.S.-Canada trade deal, USMCA, is up for renegotiation by July, and Trump has been very clear he wants major revisions, or even a pullout. USMCA currently exempts 6/7 of U.S.-Canada trade, meaning if Trump rewrites it or withdraws, it could threaten 2.3 million Canadian jobs. U.S. terms, that is 20 million jobs. That would be the biggest drop since the 1930s, when there were soup kitchens across Canada. A word from our sponsor. One of the best ways to secure your Bitcoin is with a hardware wallet, a physical device that lets you keep your coins offline without internet connection. One of the most trusted names in hardware wallets is CoinKite, maker of the famous block clock. CoinKite devices are made in Canada and they're run by passionate Bitcoiners who've been at this since 2012, back when Bitcoiners were trading in person at swap meets. You can pick up hardware wallets and plenty of other goodies at coinkite.com/ProfSaintAnge. That's CoinKite.com/ProfSaintAnge. Okay, back to our show. Last week, Facebook announced they're laying off 20,000 workers, 1/5 of the company, because AI can do it cheaper. In a cruel irony, they'll be plowing those 20,000 salaries and free back rubs into building more AI data centers. And so with AI job replacement finally putting some numbers on the board, it is prudent to ask what happened last time we wiped out 2/3 of jobs, the Industrial Revolution. Interestingly, AI is the opposite of the Industrial Revolution. It doesn't replace physical jobs, it replaces mental jobs. In fact, it makes physical jobs pay more because automation makes us rich. That is the whole point. Automation is cheaper. Of course, this is deeply disturbing for the overeducated white collars who spent their life looking down on men who work with their hands. So when the Industrial Revolution hit in the early 1800s, roughly 70% of Americans worked on a farm. The other 30% were split between domestic servants, traders, wholesale and retail, and skilled crafts, so weaving, cobblers, blacksmiths, tailors. Now fast forward 200 years, and farm workers have dropped to 2%, replaced by tractors, combines, and refrigeration. The servants, traders, and crafts actually doubled as maids and butlers for the 1% converted into everybody using Uber Eats to deliver poke bowls while the dog's at the groomer. So those went from 30 to 50% of jobs. What happened to the other 50? A big chunk, sadly, was government, which grew from 2% of jobs in 1800 to more than 20% today, because good times make big parasites. Another chunk was healthcare, going from almost nothing in 1800, you basically went to the hospital to die, to 1 in 8 jobs today. The final 20 got replaced 1-to-1 by what we now call white-collar work cubicle jobs. So accounting and finance, tech, analysts, administrative workers, these are in the AI firing line. Now, they won't all go. Customers still want to talk to a human, and somebody's got to check what the AI is doing. But if we lose, say, 15 of those 20, how do we replace them? Easy, the same way we did last time, services. After all, we're not trying to replace 70% of farm jobs. We're talking 1/5 that. On the ground, this would mean regular people consuming services like rich people do today. Almost nobody would mow their lawn. Just like today, almost nobody cuts their own hair or raises their own chickens. Meanwhile, more wealth means more stuff, bigger houses, second houses, more electricians, plumbers, carpenters, and they all make much more since automation raises everybody's wages. Consider that today you make $200 a day painting a house. In India, you make $9, and that's only half an industrial revolution. India does have electricity. Now, in theory, robots are coming next, but they'll go much slower, probably 20 or 30 years, because you only need one AI for 8 billion people, but you need 5 robots for a McDonald's. Consider it took 50 years from the first electrified factory to half of factories using electricity. We don't even have the first robot factory yet. In short, if AI delivers the productivity revolution it promises, Starbucks will pay 6 figures. And if it doesn't, false alarm, AI was a bust. So as next, when the smoke clears, we'll be fine, but AI job replacement will hurt the young and unskilled. It will gut high-income, overeducated, Democrat-leaning white collars, including the journalists, professors, and analysts who write the AI doom porn. So there's a lot of disruption and a lot of doom porn between here and there. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and go to petersanons.com for daily videos and in-depth articles with charts and all the gory details. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.